Hey guys, I wanted to do something a little bit different here, but I basically wanted to give you my thoughts on some of the popular IEM reviewers out there. So we're just going to go through a bunch of them, and I may miss some, but I'm just going to go over the ones that are extremely popular and then to go from there. So the first is obviously Super Reviews. Now, what I like about Super Reviews is that he's extremely articulate. You definitely understand what that IM is going to sound like. He basically has nice and delineated chapters, basically build quality, fit and comfort, sound signature. But I also like this. He tells you what he likes about the IM, and then he tells you what he doesn't like. And I think that's important because there are some reviewers, you don't know what they don't like. You know, they basically only talk about great things about every IEM. Then it's like, what do you like? What do you dislike? And so it allows me to understand two things. If the reviewer is on point, it lets me know specifically what's wrong with the IEM. But on a more tangential standpoint, it lets me know what this reviewer, what are their preferences, right? So I've been studying this guy for a while, and I know like kind of I know what he likes and I know what he doesn't like, right? So it allows me to adjust accordingly. So what do I know about Mark if I had to make a guess? I think he likes neutral-ish IEMs that are slightly bright slanted. I think when it comes to bass, he likes a little bit less than me, but me, I like bass a little bit more than him. I think I'm more warm slanted. I think he's a little bit more, he likes things with a little bit more, brightness, obviously, and things like that. But as I said, I really like that he lets you know like what he likes and what he doesn't like, and he's very good at explaining the IEM. So he's definitely one of my favorite reviewers. All right, so the next reviewer I want to talk about here, this is Amigo. So he's actually one of my favorite reviewers out here. I think he has the best structure in his reviews, and I also think he's very good at explaining the IEM. So I always feel like with his reviews, I walk away with a better understanding of what that IEM sounds like. So let me tell you kind of, in this case, he's reviewing the ZGOT Horizon. Now, even though the video is long, 28 minutes, he has clear chapters, right? So he talks about the box and the accessories, the cable, the design and build, the specs, the looks, what his wife as well as her friends think about it. The comfort, like how small is it? Is it going to be large? He lets you know. The bass, the mids, the treble, the technicalities, the soundstage, the impedance effects, as well as comparisons. Compare and contrast this reviewer, okay? Not that I want to throw shade, but I want to prove a point here, to this reviewer. This reviewer talks for 42 minutes, and you have no idea what he's talking about. And that's actually my criticism of this reviewer, and I'm not going to really say much about him, but basically, this is like, he's talking for 42 minutes, and I have no idea, like, where's your set? Where you need to put chapters in here. You need to be more concise. You're just all over the place. So I find, personally, for me, I can't really take this reviewer, I can't digest what they have. Whereas this reviewer, he's very clear in everything here. Not only that, I also like that he also shows you the musical references he's looking at, and nearly every single time I'm like, I may not agree with his little wall of rankings in the end where he gives his personal grade of it, but at the end of the day, when he describes the IEM, that is pretty much how that IEM is going to sound like. He's not going to lead you astray. All right, so the next reviewer I want to talk about is Prime Audio Review. I actually love this reviewer. So what I like about his reviews is that he's extremely concise. So this is like 10 minutes. This is like 13 minutes. This is like, 13 minutes. This is like 11 minutes. But also, he does a very good job of describing the IEM. But what I also like is that he actually is pretty honest. And he also has a good ear. So I'm going to go over IEMs that I know. I've heard these IEMs. And I know the weaknesses of each of these IEMs. And he actually explains it. So the Tantrum Origin, I know the Tantrum Origin doesn't have the best bass. And listen to how he describes it. Like, okay, let's play, right?
Interesting basses. It's sort of tastefully restrained in quantity.
It's tastefully restrained in quantity. That's how he's describing the bass. That's spot on. That's actually exactly the issue with this. Like, Tantrum doesn't have a lot of bass, and it's not trying to, right? Let's go over another IEM. I know this IEM as well, the Blue 02. This IEM has some problems, okay? Look at how he describes it. Pay attention to what he says here.
vibrancy that makes them shine. There's a bit of dryness to the overall mid-range presentation, particularly in the lower mids, and the notes in the lower mids feel a touch thin, so male vocals aren't very rich or saturated.
That's spot on. Like, he's telling you what's wrong with this IEM. And sometimes I feel like some reviewers don't do that, but he's actually, he's spot on. And in that matter of 13 minutes, he tells you, let's go over another one. This is the Juicier Harrier. So the problem that I notice about the Juicier Harrier is the treble is very boring. It's very dry. It's even more boring than the Lush, right? What does he say here?
Which is where it gets some of its sort of sterility or staleness from. And then in the treble area, you can see it is pretty tame. It is muted.
Tame and muted. That's how he's describing the treble, right? And then look at what he just says here. Now, he's doing a review of the EPC 40, but he's also doing a slight mini review of the Keyfine Quattro. Now, listen to what he says about the Quattro when he's talking about it.
In the mid-range, the Quattro comes across as a little bit leaner, so notes are thinner and a bit more separated, which can sound a little...
See, this is what I like about this guy, is that he basically is super concise. His videos are short, he's to the point, but he's also on the money when it comes to mentioning flaws about the IEM. The one thing about Prime Audio Review, he never says, this IEM is bad, don't buy it. Or this IEM is like, or this IEM is awesome, you should absolutely buy it. Or sometimes he does, but in general, what he does instead is the way he describes it. If you pay attention, like, for example, one thing about this guy, when he says lean a lot on an IEM, I'm like, fuck it, I'm not going to buy it. You know why? Because every single time I've bought an IEM where it said lean, where he goes, the vocals are lean, the bass is lean. Dude, that IEM sucks, dude. You know what I mean? So he gives you a lot of tells, a lot of hints on areas of what that IEM has problems. If the bass is too much, he'll be like, oh, the bass is actually kind of covering the vocals. Or he'll be like, if the bass is too thin, he'll be like, it's not authoritative. You know, it lacks weight. It lacks note weight. If the vocals are shouty, he'll be like, it's shouty. He doesn't hold back, right? But he's also very elegant in how he says it. Love this reviewer. He's really awesome. Alrighty, so the next reviewer I want to talk about is Paul Wasabi. This guy is one of my favorite reviewers of all time, and I want to kind of tell you about how I personally navigate his reviews, because after a while, there's patterns, okay? So I'm going to ask you guys, the audience, what is the difference when you look at the notes between this one, okay, with all text, right, and this one in his notes, where it's like images and he's clearly doing something here? What is the difference? You want to know the difference? He likes this IEM. He doesn't like this IEM. How can you tell? So what Paul Wasabi does is he will obviously tell you how the IEM, and I'm going to also tell you something as well. I know these IEMs. I know the CCA Phoenix. I hated this IEM. I know the YU9 Audio Q. I love this IEM. What is he doing? He's not doing EQ here. He likes it out the box, right? Here, he's trying to fix it, and he's telling you what you need to fix, right? So what I like about Paul is that right from the beginning on how things go here, he will tell you how it sounds like, but then he's going to tell you what you can do to fix the sound. What is he doing? He's dipping the highs here. What is he letting you know? This is a little bright, a little sharp, a little sibilant, a little shouty. That's why he's dipping it down here, right? He's not doing that on this side here. And that's what you notice is not only does he give you really detailed notes, but he's also telling you what he would change, and those changes actually tell you what is wrong with the IEM. So as an example, if you start seeing him cranking up things on the left, what is he telling you? The bass is a little weak. When he starts cranking things down, what does that mean? That means the bass is a little bit overpowering. When he starts cranking things in the middle, what's going on? He's trying to change something with the mids, with the vocals. Maybe it's too shouty. Maybe it's too recessed. Maybe it's too this, right? So what's the problem here? It's too bright. And that's what I like about Paul is that he actually tells you, actually indirectly when you look at it, what's wrong with it. He never says directly, this IEM is bad, or this IEM is average, or whatever. What he does is, this is how I would fix it. And when you look at what he's EQing, you start to understand what is wrong with that IEM. And that's actually why I like Paul Wasabi. All right, so the next reviewer I want to talk about is Precog. So let's play him for a few seconds.
Share some impressions of two new budget dynamics.
All right, so here are my thoughts on Precog. I think he's actually one of the best reviewers in terms of explaining the IEM. So basically, he is extremely articulate, and he actually talks about the IEM in a way that I understand, at least for me. Like, I find like he's pretty much on the money, like how he describes the IEM. But I want you guys well, I want to say two messages. I want to talk to Precog, and then I want to talk to people watching. So to Precog, even though I'm going to give some constructive feedback here, I don't want you to change anything. I want you to do things exactly the way you are doing it. Keep it the same. Don't change anything. Okay, that said, I'm going to now talk to you guys, the audience. You need to understand something about Precog. He's a little jaded. Because if you look at his IEM ranking list, he's like talking like $17,000, $3,500, $4,500. This guy's seen and heard the best of the best. Okay, so when he comes back and he's reviewing a $20 IEM, he's not going to be like, "Oh, you got to buy this. This is awesome." No, he's not going to do that. He's just going to be. He'll be up front. He'll be like, it's not that good. And so what I want you guys to understand from the audience is that look at his reviews as two parts. The first part, which is pretty much 90% of his review, he's describing what the IEM is, and he is the best at explaining it. But the last 10% is his opinion, as in like, what he thinks about it. This guy, it takes a lot to impress him. So just take that accordingly. Don't take it personally. Don't take it personally. This is just how he reviews, like 90%, which is when he's describing the IEM, you will know what that IEM sounds like. But when he says, "Oh, that IEM's not good," don't take it personally, because this guy's like basically been eating ribeye his whole life, and now he has to review ground beef. Okay, he's not gonna be like, "Oh, that ground beef is excellent." He's had freaking filet mignon and fucking ribeye. Okay, he's not gonna be like, he's just saying it as it is. But as I said, I don't want him to change. I don't want him to start giving S tier rankings to freaking crappy IEMs because they're, just because of whatever. Don't change anything. But what I am saying to you guys, the audience, is look at his reviews more from the standpoint of how he's describing the IEM, but then his opinion at the end, when he ranks it, just note, like, it takes a lot for him to, rank things high. So don't take it personally, right? That's my take on Precog. Alrighty, so the next reviewers I want to talk about, these are popular reviewers, but I'm going to say something a little bit of a hot take here. These are reviewers I find hard to navigate, as in it's hard for me to know where I'm going. So the first reviewer I want to talk about is Z Reviews, also known as In-Ear Fetish. So my issue with In-Ear Fetish is that he likes everything. When you look at all 400 IEMs, he doesn't have a bad thing to say about any of them. He likes everything. But the thing is, I think he genuinely likes them. You know what I mean? But to me, I find that hard to navigate. Another reviewer who's not quite the same as Z Reviews, but kind of has the same sort of issues, is Andy Vault. So I find that if you look at every single IEM that he's ever reviewed, he has only positive things to say about it. And so it can be a little tricky because he doesn't have a clear dislike. I've never seen him be like, "Dude, this IEM is bad at this. Like, it's not good at this. It's not good at this. Watch out." He never says that. He says everything is good, which can be hard to navigate. And for me, I find that very difficult because for me, I think it's important to find reviewers that have clear dislikes and likes. I don't have to agree with what they like or dislike, but I need to know what you don't like, because if I don't know what you don't like, I don't know anything about you. And that's my 2 cents regarding some of these reviewers. But there's a lot like these where they only say positive things about the IEM, but when you actually break it apart, I'm like, well, what don't you like? Then you sit there like, he doesn't like anything. I mean, he likes everything, which is not a bad thing per se, but it is hard to navigate for me personally.